All right, everybody, welcome. We are in week number 4 of our focus group. Congrats for those that have all tuned along. It's been a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of good feedback, and a lot of, actually, especially after last week, a lot of things starting to come together for you guys. So again, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Casey Mitzel with me today.
Hello, hello.
Today, we're actually diving in, again, where everything kind of starts to make sense and come together at a higher level. Today, we're covering, like what we talked about previously, is X factors. We talked about weight loss. Actually, we'll do a quick review of this real quick, Casey. We talked about weight loss. We talked about how to facilitate weight loss. We talked about fat burning, what fat burning is, what it's not, how to control that, what the benefits are, the things that stipulate it so you can figure out why you're not seeing results or why you're not feeling that certain way, how to optimize. We talked about nutrition. We talked about body composition. We talked about how all that works to basically take out all the variables. So you can pretty much just figure out, like, the body's actually not that hard to figure out. We just tend to make it feel like that's the case. And then last week, that's what I was saying, that's why it was a lot of people's favorite call. It's because you actually went in and applied all the stuff that we learned in the last few weeks to be like, this is what a real body composition test looks like. This is why you should pay attention to it. This is what's going on. And then you pretty much just simply broke down what a person needs to do with the knowledge that you went, kind of basically proving everything you've talked about, which is very cool. And a lot of people appreciated that. So this week, we've talked about, when we talked about weight loss, and how easy that is and how mostly it's about calorie reduction that's going to create that and how much weight or how many calories are in a pound. But we did say there's some X factors that play a role in that. They are minute. They actually aren't the biggest part of that. A lot of them actually in itself prove that it's probably the deficit that's not happening with that situation. But we were going to cover them this week because a lot of people have questions about them. We're talking about stress. We're talking about hydration, sleep, inflammation, plateaus, electrolytes, all those kind of things that people talk about and like that kind of mess with people as far as lack of clarity because they think there's all these variables and kind of showing them where their place of these variables are. So with that being said, today's information is all from chapters 17, 19, 20, and 21 from the Habits of Health. You can go there and look more information if this piques some interest for you. But that's our introduction today. I'm going to turn it over to Casey to kind of give his thoughts on the recap and then kind of jump into these factors that we were talking about here today.
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the things I'm still seeing or still hearing a lot from people out there is the idea of fat burn, or I'm out of fat burn. And they use it interchangeably with I'm at a stalled weight. And fat burn, we have to remember, is just a metabolic state. It's a metabolic state of using more fat for calories and for energy. So it has nothing to do with, per se, losing weight, losing fat, or anything like that. It's just a metabolic state is what fat burn is. And what we're typically looking for there is that feeling of less hunger, the feeling of control, mental clarity, unlimited energy, that kind of stuff. So that's fat burn. So that's different from weight loss. Right?
Yeah, kind of cool. It's like a square, a rectangle, or a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't a square kind of a deal. Like if you're not losing weight, it's not that you're not in fat burning.
Right.
We want to clarify that, especially because weight loss is different than fat loss.
Yeah, because the end result is if you have less hunger and you feel good and you have more energy, that you're going to create a calorie deficit. And that's what we've been kind of hitting home, is that the calorie deficit is what creates the weight loss, the fat loss. And hopefully fat loss, not just weight loss.
Exactly. Fat loss, not just weight loss. And that could be the reason why they're not losing weight. So it's definitely explaining why you're actually not out of fat burning. But if you are out of fat burning, that could be potentially why you're not losing weight, especially if, basically coming back to if you're not creating a calorie deficit. Yeah, that's great feedback because that actually has been some things that people have been like, they're getting it, but it isn't like they can't like reference it like that, and they're kind of getting the difference between the two. So good recap.
Yeah, hydration. So hydration, as we know, is what is the saying? When you're thirsty, 30, or when you're hungry, 30% of the time you're thirsty. Is that what it is? Is that the percentage?
Yep.
So I mean that's a big one. I mean, sitting down having a glass of water before you decide to just mindlessly snack, which is something we wouldn't do anymore either because we had tracked that in our tracker, right?
Yeah.
So mindless eating is gone.
Yeah, let's go over that, Casey. What I want to do for people today is kind of break down like those areas that we talked about over and over again. Like, okay, it's basically these are your core principles, but just to be completely honest with you, there are a couple other things that can come into play. They're actually most of the time it doesn't even matter at all, but there are things. We wanted people to know like, hey, it's not just calorie deficit only, because there are other factors that come into play. They're just usually not the reason for it. It's usually like what you said. It's not the calorie deficit. It's not staying in fat burning. It's not paying attention to the details we spent the last 3 weeks covering. And those other things that we wanted to cover today were stress, because stress plays a role in this. And what you actually, before I list them off, just to kind of prove the point that it is actually mostly the main principles we talked about in the first 3 weeks, most of these things that can affect weight loss or not fat loss, really actually, moreover, if they're going on, they lead to needing to be more hungry, which tends to make people eat more. So it's actually still the same thing over and over again.
Right, which is still eating more than what you intended to eat.
It still goes back to the not creating a calorie deficit or not staying on the nutritional component. So that's stress, that's hydration, sleep, and inflammation. Those are some of the ones that we picked out that do play a large role, and we're going to explain that. So, Casey, you started off first by talking about hydration. So let's talk about hydration first and how that plays a role, and that can be a factor in one of those things. Because people hear all the time, like, oh, I'm supposed to drink water, or if I drink this much water, it promotes weight loss, or all this other junk. And it's like, there are, but it's like that much of the equation.
Well, I mean, here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't truly understand, but where does your fat go when you burn it?
I love this one because I was like, what? It
actually goes in CO2 and water. So it's actually spilled out through water, urination, and sweat, and evaporation, and everything else, and also CO2, which is you breathing. So that's where I also love to throw in exercise, because what causes you to breathe more rapidly but exercise? So in a calorie deficit, breathing more oxygen, blowing out more CO2, and then of course having enough water, so your water has all of the water that, or your body has all of the water that it needs to either flush toxins out, but to just deal with all the cellular things that it does, and cooling the body temperature down, all these things that are important. So I mean, without that, it's we know what percentage of our body is actually water. It's a very high percentage.
Yeah. So people hear things that like hydration are the reason like why you cannot be losing weight. There is some weight to that. Pardon the bad pun, but really what it comes down to is like, because some of the benefits are is drinking water does help increase your metabolism. It does help the liver break down fat into stored energy. What are some of the other benefits? I'm kind of going blank here. Just some of the other benefits of it.
Well, just your skin, just everything. It's just such a critical role. Your digestion, did you already say that? I think you did with the liver and everything, but
yeah. Well, then also if that's how a big chunk of your fat's leaving the body, then that's the more water you flush through, the more it has a chance to exit. And not to mention that water, proper hydration relieves toxins from the body and helps release toxins from the body, which plays a role in how you feel and other effects and stress on the body, and also inflammation. But again, small role when you really actually break it down.
There's actually this really cool thing that I visualized. I've heard this one time. I'm not sure if it was in a seminar or discussion. But when you look at the fat cell, your fat cell is kind of trying to hold on to itself. It's trying to keep its form. And even if the fat cell's been demolished, right? It's been tapped into for energy. The osmolality, so the pressure between the outside and the inside, can try to hang on to that shape, and it will fill it up with whatever it can. So it may try to even fill it up with water. And then all of a sudden you take in a lot of water, and actually some dieting people will call this a whooshing syndrome, which means that you bring in a whole bunch of water, it changes the osmolality of the cell pressure, and all of a sudden, whoosh, the water releases from the cell, and the cell can no longer take that form or that shape, which is going to tighten everything up.
Yeah. So kind of getting to put this into context, kind of proving that could be a factor, and those are all the reasons why. But more often than not, if it's affecting your results, because like you said, there's other things that play a role besides just the deficit that you're creating calorie-wise. More often than not, it's the reason that because water, helps fat leave the body, all this other stuff. But moreover, it's because a lot of the time, 30% of the time, people actually confuse the fact that they're thirsty with being hungry, which causes them to probably eat more throughout a process of that, which again is going to affect their deficits and actually losing weight. So really kind of leads us back to the original thing that we talked about. It is a calorie deficit. It's going to help.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, if you are following a fat burn type of system, then the kidneys actually store water a completely different way. So you probably have noticed that you may go potty a lot, and right, have we noticed that? Yeah, it happens. So you're flushing water out differently in that state of metabolism than you would be if you have carbohydrates that can attach to several grams of water and be stored inside muscle cells, liver cells, that kind of thing, which accounts for a lot of that weight that we see when we fluctuate in and out of fat burn.
Yeah. So hopefully that one particularly, now you understand the benefits and why people talk about water and hydration and why you should stay with it on plan, but also that just basically leads us back to prove that it is all the other factors majority of the time that we're talking about there. So that's really good. And yes, you know, you probably have noticed you're using the bathroom more. I had this, when I started the program, this all of a sudden urge to decorate the bathroom. I don't know why. So I think it's because I was spending extra time in there.
Right. A lot of trips for sure. Getting your steps in.
Perfect. So then let's talk about what factor do you want to talk about next that a lot of people...
I think stress maybe. So if we talk about stress and, you know, what will happen is you'll increase your levels of cortisol, which actually increases the metabolism of, you know, your fat and carbohydrates if carbohydrates are present. So it actually increases, in a way, your metabolism. So you get more hungry. So it's like you are out of control with like this hunger thing that's happening. And it's not necessarily because you just eat out of stress. Well, you are eating out of stress, but you're eating out of the fact that your body is burning faster because of it. So what happens is with increased cortisol comes increased insulin. And just like we've talked about numerous times, if the insulin levels spike, then blood sugars crash. And then if you're in fat burn, you don't notice that. That actually could be a benefit. But if you're not in fat burn, if you are taking in a glycolic type of carbohydrate-based food plan, then you have crashed blood sugars and you're looking for more food right away.
Yeah. So again, not as much as what it actually does to the body and possibly slowing down weight loss, fat loss, or anything else for your body. It's really more of like what it makes you feel, which again, like, you know, we actually are covering more about the science of our nutrition of our plan. Like, you know, in the previous focus groups, we've talked about like the other habits that we form. But that's why Dr. A is a genius and wrote a whole chapter on stress reduction and why that is, because you're really fighting an uphill battle if you get stressed out from work every single day or stressed out by certain relationships or how you do things. That's why it's called habits of health, because if you do not do something to change those things of what you can control, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle your entire life of being hungry. And then we know what happens from that. And again, you do see it all play out long term. So, you know, you talk about the cortisol, the insulin levels, and all of those things. So that kind of explains why people will say stress affects weight loss or fat loss. And I want to clarify this because, you know, we talk about weight loss and fat loss on here. Weight loss is when, you know, the scale moves. Fat loss is when your nutrition's dialed in and you're creating a deficit and you're obviously all the right components are in there and you're losing fat with that. And it's obviously easier to do in a fat burning state plan. But again, that's, you know, so either way, that's the role that stress can actually play on weight loss or fat loss or whatever it is we're talking about here. So again, really kind of more pushing us back to the, what are you actually eating nutritionally and what's actually happening in your body, not stress actually playing a role on your lack of weight loss or fat loss.
Right.
I mean, anything else you want to add on the topic of stress?
Don't be stressed. Yeah. Just don't do it.
Well, actually, what's
hard for all of us, and it's part of life, right? So it's how we deal with those things. So how you know, if you positively take a situation and look at the bright side. I know it's easy to say because we've all been in situations where, you know, if Candy was on here, she'd tell you, what are you talking about? You're stressed out a lot because I've got a lot of things that I'm concerned with, that I want certain things to happen a certain way, which we all do. So it's just normal, but how we deal with it is going to be the big game changer.
And how we get better at it over time. So yes, I was cracking up some like, yeah, I talk about stress reduction and all that stuff. But yeah, I still have lots of levels of stress. And no one actually claimed to be perfect on there. But if you start to change them, it does get better over time. You can start changing things and how you approach them. You know, like I can name a bunch of situations, but when you have a platform, you can start to change those things that do hold you up. And now you know, like how what I love about all this is it just basically helps you navigate factually with where you're at and take the emotional out of it. So when you know, like for instance, like I was stressed one time and I was going too far on my meals. I mean, not one time, like multiple times. and I ended up going out and eating something I didn't want to. I didn't beat myself up. I just got back on the horse the next day, because health is not created one day, like, by one decision you make one time. And then I recognized why. It was stress. It was definitely lack of sleep, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And it was also low blood sugar levels. So what? I'm human. And so all that really explained why I went out and did something, and I knew the cause and effect of it, which really relieved me of any stress or emotions about what I did. It just was what it was, and I'm on to the next.
Well, exactly. Move on to the very next thing. But I think it also reinforces the whole idea. Now, where was I going with that? I had this great idea, and then I was listening to what you were saying, and then now I got distracted. But it reinforces the idea that you are in control of what you put into your body. So oftentimes I'm talking to my clients and they'll say, look, I got this, you don't understand. I have this job thing going on. I got the kids are doing this. I'm worried about, I'm taking more classes. I'm at school. I've got this stress. And it's like, the one thing you can control is the thing that actually goes into your body. You're in full control over that. So out of all of the things that you have no control over, why not control the one thing that you do?
Yeah.
And that will change a lot of things. So you don't have that extra stress. You don't need to have that on top of it. Not only did I do all of these things or all these other things that are influencing my stress factors, but I also didn't eat the way I wanted to, which also was a stressor.
Yeah. And to quote you on an earlier call, you'll either know exactly why you hit your goal, or why you did it, or why you feel good, or why you don't. And actually, I'll give you an example of this. Like, sleep is something I need. I figured out in my health journey, I need sleep too. It greatly affects all my other areas. I made a decision because we got back from a trip this week. I had to catch up on work, and I get wired in the evenings if I stay up too late. Well, that rolled into 2 a.m. and then that rolled into only 4 hours of sleep. You better believe that I was hungry. Better believe, even though I know factually all the stuff we're talking about here, I made a bad decision. I made 2 bad decisions. I made the decision not to sleep, and then I made the decision knowing I shouldn't eat what I was going to eat, and then I ate it, which made me feel worse, which threw me off even more, which made me stress, which made me want to fight nutrition the entire time. And basically, I say that all to say is that I saw the domino effect, and it was easy to pull myself out of it knowing all of that stuff. I'm here with you today, fully back on track, completely dialed in, and nothing feels as good as you feel when you get back on track. And I know why.
Yep. Yeah, it's another lesson that you learned. So it's just you continue to reinforce and strengthen your game so that, next time you might catch it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So that explains stress, and I think everyone deals with that. So your advice on reducing it is like recognize where stress triggers you and know if you can control it or can't control it. But if there's something you can do, like you may not be able to change your job, but you can change what your decompression routine is afterwards. You may not be able to change your relationship with friends or spouse or family, but you can plan a decompression or plan for that, or you can make sure you make time to exercise, because that will also reinforce your health goals. But endorphins also make you happy, or make you feel better. So you can do all these things that counteract what you can't change, and you can start counteracting what you can change. So just knowing that it's not a weird thing that it's going to mess with your body. It's more of how it messes with your head, and then what you do from that. It's not that stress is going to jack up how your body operates and burns fats or doesn't burn fat. It's really what it messes up chemical and what really messes up here.
Yeah, those hormones usually serve us well. In times of need, they definitely would. But sometimes when food is so readily available, like that stress of you being hungry would force you to go out and hunt some food down. And that would be a good level of stress, or something to avoid if you wanted to make sure your family wasn't always hungry. But when when you can walk 6 steps to your pantry or your refrigerator, that doesn't serve us very well.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ray uses like almost similar example in chapter 21 of the Habits of Health. So that's perfect. So that's stress. Casey, I'll feel like the game show host tonight. Which topic would you like next? Which category?
What do we have remaining?
We still have sleep. I think we want to hit on inflammation, and maybe even talk about plateaus, which really kind of summarizes all of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, sleep. I thought we kind of touched on that already, but it's probably not the one that I should be speaking the most about. I get up super early in the morning to teach early workout classes. I want to feel like I've had time in my own home away from anything else that I'm doing. So I do like to, let's say, hey, there's a reason why I can come home have a couple of hours of me time or my family time or whatever inside my house. And I know a lot of people feel when they have 9-to-5 jobs or jobs that are even more hours than that, is they come home and they go to bed and they wake up and they leave again. So it's like you're paying your mortgage, but you never get to see the inside of your house when it's lit, in the daytime. So that can be a stressful situation for people too. So I do like to stay up a little bit later than I should. So sleep isn't always something, it's something that I'm working on. Yeah. That's something that I'm constantly working on.
Well, what's cool about all the topics we're covering, if we're talking about perfection, either one, if you have to be perfect to talk about them, I don't think either one of us can talk on any of these subjects.
And again, that's a level of like improving rather than thinking that we're going to be perfect in that.
I'm a million times better on all the stuff we've talked about before. It doesn't make me perfect. And I think that's part of the clarity people have liked about that. They understand why, and they understand that no one's perfect on this stuff. So we know this I should be like this shame that I should be better. So now we're all human. You can't control these things, but you can start to understand why and put yourself in a better state. So we did talk a little about sleep, but we didn't even actually really dive into it. So what I'll say on sleep is I've researched this a lot, and I'm really passionate about it because I live by the motto before starting this, looking at my nutrition and actually making health a priority in my life, that sleep is something you get when you're dead. Like that's honestly sleep's for the lazy, and sleep's what you get when you're dead. But that's not the case. And actually, I wish I would have looked up the stat, but did you know that your brain function is like way high percentage less effective if you don't get adequate sleep per night? So you're not even being as effective. It's not like the more hours a day is even allowing you to be more effective. But here are some real things that actually affect the body on sleep, where a lot of people will be like, oh, if you're not sleeping, it's going to affect your weight loss, which again, weight loss could be whatever. It could be, we really want fat loss. But sleep, these are some things that happen with sleep. Is one, quality is just as important as quantity. Just because you get sleep doesn't mean that it's quality. It's REM sleep, which is, where your actual body gets into a cycle of where it actually regenerates itself and replenishes chemicals. So you want to make sure that you're getting good quality sleep, not getting caffeine in there, that you have a non-stimulated environment, that you don't stimulate yourself before going to bed, all of those things. And that, everyone may be wired a little bit differently, but overall, general consensus says that men need 7 to 8 hours of sleep, women need 6 to 7 hours of sleep. And then these are some of the things that happen when you don't sleep. So again, it can affect your body. It could, anything's possible, but the fact that the sleep affects your weight loss or lack of fat loss is really not the highest priority. It's really what not sleeping does to you. So when you don't sleep, your body doesn't produce enough ghrelin. I'm going to do this backwards. It produces more ghrelin, which basically makes you more hungry. And that's like if you've ever had I know there's a lot of young parents. I'm a young parent, and I can start to recognize this now. You ever wake up and uncontrollably want to eat something, and you can probably trace it back to like, I did not sleep well at all last night, or I didn't have many hours of sleep. You just aren't yourself. It's also affects your body's ability to produce leptin, which basically is the chemical that tells your body that you're full. Again, adding this up to the fact that you'll probably go out and eat more or not be paying attention to as much. It also doesn't allow the body to produce, to restore chemicals like dopamine or serotonin, which allow us to feel overall, to generalize it, it just makes us feel good. Those are chemicals that make us feel good. And so these are all things that can play a factor in this. So not necessarily what can stop your body. It does, like obviously not getting sleep is going to affect your body very similar to just natural stress, is because your body will be stressed out. So like cortisol will come into play if you're not getting good sleep. But also your body regenerates when you're sleeping. So if you're not giving it time to regenerate, to replenish, to restore, obviously that, it doesn't take a genius to be like, if you're not giving your body the time to restore, obviously not good things are going to happen. So, but it's really more, the sleep really kind of helps you, again, come back to the fact that you're probably not paying attention to your calorie deficit or or hitting your TEE on the day.
Yeah, because the next side effect is basically like, I don't have any energy. I must be hungry.
Yep.
Right? It's like, I know a lot of people who eat, they simply eat because it's like, I don't have the energy to go do this. It must be because I'm not eating enough food, which is not true. It could be. It's potentially could be a reason, but it's most likely not.
Yep, exactly. So, anything you want to say that you've seen on that, like knowing all those things, like with sleep?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, that's exactly it. You know, and then there's all kinds of, you know, good meditation things out there, and just things that you can do to kind of ease your mind before you get ready for bed. Things, shutting off the screen time before you go to bed at certain hours before, that kind of thing.
I think
You know,
you told me before you like bubble baths, Casey. Is that right?
I would love a bubble bath, but I don't often take one.
Yeah, perfect. I think we hit on sleep. And again, all these things what I love about it is it really what we're doing is we're taking away all those things that people talk about out there, and we're really kind of putting them in context. Like really, it's not as many wild variables as we see. It's really these things right here. So I think that leads us down to inflammation and overall plateaus in general. So you want to hit on inflammation?
Well, yeah, I mean, inflammation is kind of the root of all dangerous things that happen in the body, but oftentimes it's going to be produced by something that's causing, you know, a challenge within your system. So sometimes we can take a look at like food allergies. It could be just regular allergies. It could be pollen. It could be something like that. But I think a lot of times people will get confused with what they're actually allergic to and what is a triggering food for them, for example. So this is where we want to get into, like, let's rule out all of those other factors as much as we possibly can, and then maybe dive into, like, do I need to get some blood work done to see if I'm allergic to gluten, or I'm allergic to potatoes, or I'm allergic to wheat or dairy or whatever, right? I think a lot of times people will say, well, I must be allergic to that, and that's why, you know, and maybe you have some, because I mean, you can feel when you don't feel great after eating something, especially when you've been on program and you've been very clean, eating things that are pretty recognizable to your system over a period of time, and then you've taken something that you haven't had in a long time and you feel pretty miserable over it. There's ways of just sensing that. So typically your response would be is that you want to eat the things that make you feel good, and you would avoid the foods that make you feel bad. But guess what? Oftentimes we can crave the foods that make us feel bad for whatever reason. So, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it could be a level of being stalled in your weight loss. But if all of these things that we talk about have been dialed in, the variables, I'm a big fan of removing variables to see what's remaining and see what's left. And if you've figured out your macronutrients, you figured out your calories, you're tracking your foods, now you're getting better sleep, you're getting your exercise in, you're getting all of your water, stress levels have reduced, all of these things that we talked about, and you have some kind of inflammation, well, maybe there's a medical thing that we need to check out. And, you know, and then let's go get it checked out, because we want to find out. We want to be the detectives of our own body and learn and know what it is so that we can just improve on a daily basis.
I love that, because I think we didn't have a plan. I just kind of played around with all the topics there. I love the inflammation topic because, again, it even goes back to proving a lot of the other stuff we talked about. You can be inflamed and holding extra water weights, and it will say the scale is going to be higher. It doesn't mean that you're not losing fat and you're not gaining muscle. I mean, or vice versa. It just means you're inflamed. Has anyone here ever, when allergies happen, or a heat wave comes through, or you fly on a plane, or just like, here's another one, eat a bunch of salty foods, like you just get inflamed, or like to your point, figure out that you had an allergy. But what's cool about the inflammation thing is you can tell if it's causing something, and then it's going to be a symptom. This is actually a benefit of figuring out your variables of plan. And that's what I like about our plan, is it helps you figure out your variables. Most people, how we're talking about the variables today, they actually aren't the thing that actually people need to pay attention to. But in those exceptions that prove the rule, they do. So let me give you an example. So my wife used our program, and it worked great for her. And then she was noticing that as she was getting through it, one thing was not improving, and that was her stress and anxiety levels, and some inflammation of the body and some overall tension. So again, because fat is everything, someone told her there was gluten. And so luckily a lot of our meals aren't gluten, but she decided to get gluten out. It wasn't gluten. She still stayed just as inflamed. And guess what it ended up being? It ended up being potato. So, and guess what is used in replacement of everything that's taking out gluten is potato. So she got worse. But yeah. The moral of the story is that most people don't have this issue going on. So you don't have to sit there and be like, oh my gosh, well, what am I allergic to that I don't know? We're just explaining inflammation and how it could come into place, how that could be offsetting the scale. And that if that is the case that you have it, the cool thing about you being on our plan is the variables are so minimal. You can figure it out. Like, Ash, it was one stop gluten, that didn't work. one stop testing, potato, that worked. Like it got figured out like that, where someone could actually spend a lifetime trying to figure out why their anxiety level is high or trying to be medicated on that kind of stuff. And so I think
when you're paying attention to this, I mean, you can figure some of those things out pretty easily. Like I've always known I've had a wheat, or I'm sorry, I do have a wheat thing, but also a dairy thing, right? And so one of my weaknesses, especially when it's available and when my goals are not as tight as sometimes I have them, is the kids have a cereal that's like, it's not an Almond Joy, but it's something like that. It's almonds and it's flakes and that kind of thing. So it does have wheat in it, which normally I would stay away from. But every once in a while I'll have a bowl of that cereal because I'm just craving cereal for whatever reason, right?
Why do you do that to yourself, man? Why do you do it to yourself?
It just depends. Well, I mean, it is. It's kind of self-sabotage. But here's the other thing that happens is because I knew that there's wheat in there, I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to do a double dose of something I know that I'm allergic to. So I'm not going to do milk on top of my cereal. So I'm going to go for the almond milk because that would be a better substitute for the milk if I have a dairy intolerance, right?
Yeah.
Within a couple of minutes, my eyes would start to itch and I could literally feel my blood pressure and my heart rate rise.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like, okay, this is strange. So long story short, after a while, I ended up getting my allergies tested, find out that I'm allergic to almonds. So here's this cereal that has almonds and me thinking, going kind of, I mean, almost trendy in a way, but I do know, but it also came back that I do have some dairy issues. But thinking that, hey, I'm not going to do the dairy, I'm going to do the healthy almond milk, right? Because all of us say that's obviously healthier. That's what we just have been told to believe. And I do the double dose of the almonds and then have all these weird symptoms. So it's like sometimes what's good for one person is not good for the other person. So we can't blanket it all.
Yeah. So, and I think we're kind of getting into the stuff that's like, people are like, now you're just confusing me. I mean, not that we mean to. So I want to clarify the moral of this story. The moral of the story is inflammation. It can happen one way, just by like, it can happen from stress. It can happen from too much salty food. It can come from a heat wave. It can come from flying. It can come from all that stuff. It can come from eating stuff that your body doesn't like. So if you're possibly inflamed, that could explain why the scale is not moving. Again, that doesn't mean you're not losing fat, and it doesn't mean you're not losing, and it doesn't even mean that you're not gaining muscle anymore either. It just means that your body's a little more stressed out, and there's more water involved in it, and there's some inflammation going on. To the other effect of it, the cool thing that we're talking about on our plan is, Casey, you were able to pretty much diagnose all your stuff probably pretty quickly because your nutrition's so simplified and dialed in that you were just like, okay, well, this one's out, this one's out, this one's in. Like, it's so easy. It's not like you're like, well, I wonder what made me feel bad, because all your nutrition's so clean that when something gets introduced that's not for Casey, it's like in a second. It's really clear.
Yeah, it's the one or two ingredients versus going out to like a buffet and deciding that I'm going to have 18 different kinds of something and 18 other kinds of something else, and then not knowing which one of those, all the complex ingredients, which one it was.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is that you probably don't have a food allergy. You probably don't have an issue. Like, you don't have to go out there and worry about this stuff. But again, we talk about, stress, hydration, sleep, inflammation, all of these things. These are the things that play in. And then actually, I don't want to skip over that point because it's so key. If you're watching this video and you find yourself going through all these things and you've system checked every single thing that we've talked about, it's not that your body's pretty messed up. Actually it could be, is my point is, it means that, like what you said, Casey, you probably need to go seek medical attention. You might have a chronic illness. You might have, like things like, Hashimoto's, thyroid condition. You might have adrenal fatigue. Like, what are a few other that like, might be pregnant? Like, that might be one. Like,
yeah. No, there's been a couple of times with just the measurements, like the measurements we went over last week, where I've actually 2 times in my career where I've told somebody that I think that you are probably pregnant. And it's not because, I'm not talking very far along either, because they didn't know yet. So, and they're like, no, there's no way, and whatever. But based on the measurements that I was seeing, it just didn't make sense. Almost like inflammation won't make sense when somebody is very, very compliant and you've done the tape measurements and the body composition. So exactly. It's like, this doesn't jive with what you're telling me. So either there's a medical condition that we don't know about, or there's this. Right. But I'm talking, you have to be, you can't be like, well, hey, I didn't track my food today. I'm not sure. I know that I ate a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't normally eat this last week or month. Right. It's like, no, I've been tracking my food. I've done everything the way that I should have. And there's still a weird thing that happened. Right. And then that's how you can start to, because you got to take out those variables.
You do, which really leads us to our last topic, Casey, which is plateaus. And you know that flat plateaus, just like gluten, is like a fad topic. It's like, oh, you know, plateaus, like you gotta shock the body, and I mean, there's truth to all this stuff. You know, that's why we're talking about it. You know, the body can potentially figure out and mess with you and do those things, but a lot of people go to that like it's the number one thing, when really more often than not, you know, if you're not losing, and clarify, you're not losing weight. A lot of people think they're in a plateau. And actually plateaus more often than not, I don't have the exact stat on, but I would say majority of the time, when people think they're in a plateau because they're thinking that, oh, I gotta shock the body and do kind of crazy things that I read on the internet, it's either one, that you actually just have amazing nutrition and you're gaining some lean muscle mass and you're losing fat, which the scale should stay the same if you're doing that, which is good. Or it's probably the latter, where you're just actually not dialed into the variables that we just talked about. Like, you know, and I'll show you in a second here an app, so we want to finish up today by showing you some app kind of stuff. But if you need to, like, you know, let's just use our program as an example to kind of simplify the example here. If you're a woman and your TEE is only around 1,500 calories a day, and you know, in our plan, you're between 800 and 1,000, you know, probably somewhere in the middle of that range or on the higher range. If that's what's going on, and you aren't compliant, and I'll show you this in a second, you can match your TEE in like a second, and of course you're not losing weight. So really, it just usually goes back to checking compliance, like you've said all along, Casey, in all the areas that we have. And people don't usually realize that. They're just like, oh, well, I thought I was doing good on my diet, so I think I should be losing weight, which really, I think another thing that we want to summarize in this week as we head into next week, so next week will really be all about like what do you do going forward, which is really the big deal. Like after we've talked about the science of weight loss and nutrition, like what's next for all you guys, for us, for everyone, actually I forgot my points. I pulled to Casey. Where was I going, Casey?
Well, I don't know where you're going specifically, but I mean, that kind of thing happens a lot. I mean, if we're taking a look at this total calories that are coming in and we're not tracking the excess that's going out, the perceived level that you're suffering somehow gives you that accepting that you must be doing something right or wrong, right? So it's like, I'm suffering, so I must be dieting in a good way. But no, you shouldn't have to suffer. You should be able to feel good. Your plateau oftentimes comes from your body trying to slow you down, not necessarily from the other nutritional things, because that's something that's a side effect of what you do after you don't feel good, is you go out and eat more, that kind of thing.
You totally actually helped me remember my point and then some. So my point is that, one, just like progress over perfection, if you're not ready to stress yourself out by paying attention to these finite details, then remember that you're good. Like actually Dawn on the call last week was such a great example. By looking at her body composition and tracking her stuff and talking with you, she was actually getting extremely clear on where she wanted to go next and where she wanted to go next, not because a body composition test told her she needed to go down that much. There was so much clarity. I just want to point out some things here. Is one, she thought she needed to lose 20 pounds. Really, if she really was like, if you know, with some referencing, she only really needed to lose like 14, which is really free. I mean, that's 3/4 of the way as opposed to like what she thought she needed to do. You know, it's good to look at that her body composition was actually pretty solid, so she can know that because of all the things that she's done for herself over the years. Her body, her lean body mass was actually pretty solid. You know, for that, and then also just kind of keeping it in context that. You know, what she was eating when she was tracking, she's like, oh my gosh, like I'm taking in much protein. Oh my gosh, this is where my calories is. Like, oh my gosh, like I need to do X, Y, and Z. The clarity was so freeing for her. And then not to mention just keeping it in context, like Dawn lost 50 pounds on our program a long time ago. I just want to soak that into this example here. She changed habits. She exercises. She practiced stress reduction. Like, she's made a lot of massive changes without knowing any of these details. Like, well, she's known a lot of them, but she doesn't know these. But she was ready to take it to the next level and to take out like the lack of clarity of it. So if you're not ready to do it, don't think that you're not doing it right. Like if you're eating small meals, you're losing weight, like it's good. If you don't want to track, then don't track. Don't force yourself to do something. Just like if the BMI chart or the body comp says you're supposed to be at a certain place, but you really feel comfortable like somewhere different than that, you don't have to do what you don't have to do. On the other token, there is clarity and freedom in knowing what you know And so if you do ever want to know, or now you know from tracking this, like this just gives you freedom to know the details. So don't think even though we're going this information, if you're tracking along, you don't have to do it. It's just like, if you ever get curious, you now know where to go. In case of your example of that was just now was so key, of just giving people that clarity of that.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that I know of is there's very few trainers, like, because I'm in the business of helping people with trainers. I'm in the business of helping trainers become better trainers. So very rarely can you blame the trainer for their faults. I mean, it's like, if they give you the tools and you don't use them, that's a whole different deal. But when somebody says, I did that program and it didn't work, I already know that they didn't do the program.
Yeah.
Right? Any program out there that is designed to do what it's supposed to be doing, if somebody follows it, will probably see amazing results. I'm not going to say probably. They will. They'll see.
Let's clarify, because there are some programs that are garbage out there. So we don't want to say all programs, but like, if they're actually on sound nutrition and under these principles,
yes,
they're good programs.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you were on a scheduled tube feeding and you knew exactly what was going into the tube,
yep,
you could control probably down to a half pound or less your weight on any given time of the year or whatever, right? It's those other things that creep in that we don't keep track of. That's generally the issue.
And to play devil's advocate on the other side, I didn't mean to say that that's not the case, but there are, like you've taught us, there's a lot of programs that just because you say you're a weight loss program, right, it doesn't actually mean that your science is nutritionally sound, but there is a ton and a lot of other ways to do weight loss besides ours that actually are. And when they say they didn't see results on them because you know that those ones were nutritionally sound, they may not be as easy. They may not have the support. They may not our program's pretty awesome. That's why I choose to coach it and not other programs. Mm-hmm. But you can just be like, yeah, you didn't actually do it, or else, it's just like your training example.
Because we've seen all the people who have had success on the program. And when you've seen so many people who have done it when they've just done the program, and hopefully, and probably with even, I don't want to give anybody ideas, but even with like 85, 90% compliancy, because we know what happens when somebody does 100%. Those are our walking testimonials out there. Those are the before and afters that you see all the time. I mean, boom, 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 they come out left and right. So that's what that is when somebody really, truly follows the program. So when somebody says, I tried that and it didn't work for me, it's like, no, and there's probably something we could have adjusted to make it work for you.
Oh,
that's the other thing.
100%. So, I mean, we're talking about our program, but we're also talking about any program that is not just our program, any nutrition, diet plan, or whatever you want to call it out there that is actually nutritionally sound. If they say it didn't work for them, it's not that they didn't work for them. It didn't work for them.
Best example of that for me is sitting right over here. I have Rosetta Stone. It didn't work for me. I didn't make it past the welcome screen yet. So when I do, I will speak another language when I go through the process. But right now I could easily say, yeah, I got that. It didn't work. Well, again, you got to go through the process in order for you to know.
I got it. Well, this has been good. Hopefully people enjoy this, because I'm a nerd on this stuff. I love it. It really helps me put this all in context here. And, again, I think it was really good putting into context Don's results from last week. So on all that stuff. I did want to do kind of a quick breakdown. If you haven't yet, this is the app. I'm going to hold it up to you real quick here. That's actually yesterday. I need to log some meals from today, so let me back up here. We did encourage you guys to track during this process, because like Dawn figured out when she was tracking some of those things, it's pretty cool to track your variables with that. So I wanted to use that example because there's a difference between doing something and intent. And I'll just say it like this. I've intended to eat better before. I've intended to exercise, get on my exercise routine. I've intended to, sleep better. I've intended to read a book, or I've intended to do Rosetta Stone. But the reason why we want to come back to it is a lot of you probably didn't get started on it. And that's totally fine. And that's actually normal. Anytime you try something for the first time, you're probably not going to be an expert at it. You're probably not going to get it down pat. That's why you have a coach if you're on our program. It's someone to support you in doing something different that you're not used to doing. So coming back to it, if you have been doing it, fantastic. You're ahead of the curve. If you've been kind of doing it, stick with it. I would encourage you. If it speaks to you, again, if you're one of those people that are I just really don't care. But also, so then don't do it if you don't care. But don't come back later saying, oh, it's not working for me. you can't prove that it's not working for you.
Right. And if things are happening rapidly for you, that's okay. That's what we said. If it's working, just stick with it. Just if you don't want to be overwhelmed by anything, just run with it as long as it's working. If
Like
it ever slows down, then we'll dive in.
Like Dawn lost her weight 7 years ago. And then again after pregnancy. So, she's done it up to this point without tracking on the app. She was just fine. So my encouragement would be, if you're doing it, fantastic, you're ahead of the curve and you know why and you love it. If you're kind of doing it and you want to be doing it, step up. You can do it. It's not about being perfect. And then if you haven't done it at all, but you are interested in this stuff, start tracking. You can do it. Just because you didn't start doing it, like it took me a lot of time. I'm like, even you saw my day today, I'm way behind. I can log those meals, but it's really helpful. So like Dawn did last week, she was like, oh, well, I saw where my calorie intake was. I saw that I had this on this day, and oh my gosh, I didn't really realize how quickly they can add up. She knew her carb level. She knew all that. And then honestly, Casey, you shared at the very beginning, like a lot of people just underreport calories. When you track, you're more apt to be more on track, because you can't just be like, oh, that thing doesn't matter that much. Or if you're like me, you get blown away by crazy stuff like, holy cow, a tablespoon of olive oil is 110 calories. Like, holy cow. So again, going back to like you and me, it says that my TEE is somewhere around 2,200 calories. In that example, if I do have an extra meal with some extra of this or a snack of this or some extra olive oil or some extra, some of this, how quickly I can, if I was trying to lose weight or if I was trying to maintain, how quickly I can go from being right on point to 500 above, like that. So that's the reason why to track. So if you're not feeling good, you can go back and figure out immediately like what's going on. So I just want to show a little bit of the app. And some of the kind of the cool stuff here is like, you can actually click on like the top one there and it'll show you like the breakdown of all your stuff, so I can see. And the clarity of that is so awesome. Like Casey, I can look at my yesterday and look at like, I know what my lean body mass is because I got a body comp test. I don't have to be like, I hope I got enough protein. I actually got within 2 grams of my lean body mass. I know I'm doing good on that. That's awesome. I know I was at my calorie intake on the day. And, it's just really cool to know. And then, another factor on top of it that we're not going to even tap into today, I know that my nutrition is I know where my stuff's coming from is nutritionally sound. I buy high quality foods most of the time, all natural, organic, and I know the meals that I'm coming from our plan are extremely high quality as well. So we're not going to get into that. We're just talking about nutrition.
Yeah, I want to say one thing because I had a good friend of mine who said this the other day, and it was so awesome. I need to repeat it. But in that whole argument of like, I eat healthy, I eat organic, that kind of thing, right? He made the analogy that if your car takes regular unleaded gasoline, and then there's a premium gasoline you could put into it, it doesn't mean that you overfill your tank by 10 extra gallons.
Yep.
Because where does the gas go when you just waste it? That's just surplus. You're just over what you really needed, even though it was healthy, even though it's better gas, right? Yep. It doesn't mean you still want to overfill your gas tank by another 10 gallons.
It's actually a very good analogy, because what happens when you overfill it is you get some really gross, nasty stuff all over the midsection of your car.
That's right.
So just like you would have some gross stuff around the midsection that you don't want to have. Exactly.
I picked up on that. I got that. Yeah.
So must have just not been as funny. So you know what? I'm not comedy is not in my blood, if you know my dad. Anyways, we've talked way too long. I've enjoyed the chats. Hopefully other people have too. I think that's pretty much it, Casey. Next week we'll talk about long-term effects, because we've really been dialing into like the fat burning portion of this and other nutrition components to build on that, and exercise and body composition, and now all these X factors that really help you clarify like where things are at. Anything that you want to add to today's call for people?
No, man, I'm loving the breakthroughs that we're seeing. I'm just loving that people are getting good information out of this and they're running with it, and just we continue to change lives on a deeper level, and that's what we're all about.
Yeah. While you were talking about that, another one thing came to mind is you mentioned it last week. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you're still not exactly sure what we're talking about here, or if you're not really like getting all of this stuff down, or like maybe you just got confused from us talking about all the X factors today, if you're eating 6 meals a day and you're even close to what our plan layout is, you're doing better than where you were probably before. So now you know where to go, and you can ask your coach for that, guys. That's why we have support and we have nutrition support. So just remember, if you're here, if you're in the game, if you're attempting to drink your water, if you're attempting to eat your meals, you're better than where I was at any day before starting program. So that's the way to look at it. So remember, progress over perfection, and that this is just basically taking out the guesswork of anything. which I believe for a lot of people, I know for me, is like, well, why would I even give effort to that? I'm super busy. Why would I give effort to that if I don't know I'm going to get a predictable result? Well, now you know how to get predictable results and make this worthwhile. Or you'll, like to quote you, Casey, you'll know why you did or why you didn't. And that's clarity right there. You don't have to take any emotion on that. So with that being said, those explain the X factors. Those explain what your body does, what it does, and try to play around with it a little bit this week. And maybe next week what we'll do is we'll actually break down some body comps and plans going forward, which might be really cool so people can see what the difference was before and after. So have a great week, everyone. Congrats, week number 4. And then lastly, as to recap here, we're literally just hitting on the science of nutrition. If you want to hear some more about this, the Habits of Health call that's done every Wednesday, it was actually done by me this week, and I covered a lot of this information, similar, that can give you more content on this. Or because goals and visions and other things like that, like you guys talked a little about that the first week, is so important, which doesn't really come in the nutrition play, but it comes in supporting your nutrition play. Don Chow did an amazing Habits of Health call the week previous on that. So go check out those ones if you're trying to be at the gym or just trying to watch some good content. Highly recommend those calls. And also, Casey, there's a reason why you do group classes. You tend to thrive when you surround yourself with people that do better. There's also science to that. So Habits of Health call every single Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. PST, 30 minutes on a topic of health that revolves around supporting your nutrition and your understanding of health in general, and even give tips on like how to manage stress levels, sleeping, all those other things we hit on each week. So that's what we got for this week. Have a great week and take on week number 4. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.